So it's Saturday, the 25th of June, 2022. And it's been a very, very long day. So, working in the garden this morning and pujas, board meeting. So I'm very tired, but I'll do my best to say something that isn't inspiring of falling asleep. Yesterday, some old monastery friends came to visit who I had seen about a year and a half ago or so, and Sumi and Craig, and but I hadn't seen their children in about 10 years. And I didn't really recognize them when I saw them. They kind of came up and I said, wow, look at that. Kaz and Kaya. And I said, wow, I don't think it's just been, you were like 3 feet tall the last time I saw you. And they said, well, can we offer you some cheese? And I said, yes, you can. So, that was a nice experience after 10 years. Get some cheese. But yeah, it was interesting just to see in my own mind that I didn't quite get it the day before. I knew they were coming. I arranged their visit as the guest monk, but I was telling some of the residents here how I had. There's a young boy across the street from a family who's moved in recently. His name's Shay, and his dad Greg and mother C come over almost daily. And so I thought, oh, that's great. Kai and Kaz can have someone to play with. They should be just about the same age. But no, they're 10 years older than that. And just thinking about that perception in the mind, and what was just how easy it is to get fooled by something like that, to not kind of get it, and then just the experience, the surprise of seeing them 10 years aged, 10 years older, a mature young woman and young man. I was trying to detect their personalities from what I remember. And so it had me thinking a bit this morning as Craig and I were working together. He was asking me questions about my monastic life, because I didn't meet Craig first, but it was in 2005 at the Lumpur Sumedho retreat at Spirit Rock that I met Sumi, and Sumi and I got very lucky, and I don't know if we chose it or what happened, but we were the ones who were selected to bring Lumpur Sumedho his breakfast, I think. And so we'd ride up in a golf cart and bring him some breakfast. And I was just fascinated by Lumpur. And just thinking, wow, that's 17 years. 17 years has passed. And that reminds me of something Ajahn said to me. And I'm not quite there as a monk yet, but he said, yeah, just you kind of ordain one day, and 20 years later you think, wow, I'm a Mahatera now, I've been a monk for 20 years. What happened? How did that occur? And in the early years, I was trying to survive really. Trying to keep it together, not let the mind overwhelm my experience. But it's been so nice meeting with old friends, because then it brings up that history and that experience of the past, and that relationship that we have to our memories and how we remember ourselves. And that brings up a sense of, what's really occurred here? What's this practice for? What's this life for? What am I doing? And so I was thinking about that in terms of just that word development, this bhavana, this sense of cultivation, development, our practice. And Tan Sampano gave a very beautiful reflection this morning around discerning, understanding, and cultivating, and knowing how to encourage wholesome states, sustain wholesome states, to recognize unwholesome states, to recognize unwholesome actions, to decrease those and prevent them from arising. He didn't get into exactly right effort, but it was pretty much what his beautiful reflection was about, and that's our path, our sense of understanding that we're trying to really develop, because that is what helps us understand our own suffering, the problems we cause ourselves, and then it allows us to extricate ourselves from the unwholesome. And then we learn to pick up, to again, to develop those wholesome actions, those things that we begin to know are good for ourselves. So I was thinking about this in some more recent reflections I've had, because I've brought this up before, so I'm sorry to bore anyone about this, but it's just sort of something that comes up for me. It's just this sense of gardening, and I had very little interest actually in the garden here at Bhayagiri. And that's interesting, isn't it? Because we can do that in our lives. We can just pick something up and run with this energy of something we want to do. And then where did that come from? Where does that arise? There's birth there. And it's good to look at that condition, to look at where it's coming from and what it's about for us, because these are external conditions. And we can take birth into those external conditions, and then sometimes, you can forget the plot, forget the sense of what's the reason I'm involved in this, or what am I doing? And one of the things I was reflecting about is I've worked in the garden we have here, and I'm a bit of a force to be reckoned with in terms of just how many plants I've tried to put in, and the actual master gardener, Rakito, has been very patiently restraining me at times when I need to be restrained, but also being very patient with allowing me to be the Tasmanian devil and kind of plant all these plants. But it's really brought about kind of some questioning around, what's this really for? Like the sense of, I've told people who've worked with me, 3 weeks ago there was actually nothing here, it was just a bunch of wood chips. And there was some pride in that until I started to look at, oh, what's that about? Is it the speed? Is there something about like, yeah, I just got it all going and now it looks really beautiful? And I remember Tanrakita was saying, you know, we had finished one area, and then he came back another day after I had gotten some more plants, and he said, oh, you filled in the gaps between those plants that we already planted. I said, oh yeah, I just thought, you know, there was so much space. And he reminded me that on the labels of the plants, it actually says how big these plants are going to be. And if you don't actually think about that, then you're going to be doing a lot more maintaining than you wanted to do in the first place, because they look like little things, but that's not what they become. And so that, you know, that also is a very good metaphor for kind of like how we work with our own defilements, how we work with our own sense of greed, hatred, and delusion, our own sense of impatience and fear and anger and regret. Whatever it might be, we might see these things, but we don't see like how we're conditioning them sometimes, how easily they can grow, and sometimes we see them as little things, and then they can become troublesome because we weren't necessarily reflecting on like, oh, if I continue in this way, this might grow bigger. And I might have to do more work in order to curtail it. And for me, I see that, for example, in certain things around desire, where I'll let my desire go around a particular, whatever object it is, whether it's a drink or food or something that I like to do or like to have, and then not seeing the danger in that, it becomes more difficult to stop doing something that I can identify, oh yeah, there might be something here that isn't quite wholesome. So the mind, for many of us, and I'm just assuming that from my own mind, is, we do that. We, in a sense, we see little seedlings in our mind, and we say, oh, that might not be so skillful. Or we might have even remembered that maybe even earlier on in the practice, we would say, oh, I'll never do something like that. Or I don't want to move in that direction. Or we can see somebody else who's doing something, so I don't want to be like that, or I don't want to encourage that kind of thing. But then all of a sudden there we are, doing the same thing, and it begins to proliferate. And so we do need to be very careful with what it is that we're doing, you know. How are we really cultivating the garden of our own mind? What seeds are we planting? And how long are we letting this go on for? And so for many of you, you can think about your early days of practice. What's it been like? What are the things you particularly cultivated? What are the good qualities that have arisen through this practice of the Dhamma? What are the things that we let slip, or we kind of, in a sense, we tell ourselves little lies. Oh, it's not that bad. It's just a little desire here and there. So when we are able to see that more clearly, then we start to see that there can be this sense of saddha, which is faith, which is a sense of confidence. We see that there can be an ability of determination, we call adhitthana. Or wholesome desire would be chanda. So we start developing these in ways where we say, well, actually maybe that isn't so good for me. Maybe I should drop that. And a lot of times it's very difficult. It's very difficult because we've developed these patterns possibly over many lifetimes. And here they are. It's not just a little flower in 3-inch pot. It's like taking on a 24-inch pot. It's huge. Oh, how did that happen? And so we try to trace that back and understand it, and through that understanding, we can begin to say, okay, I need to maybe pull back from this or change direction. Find out the ways that we can move in wholesome directions. So one of the things I reflect on is like, well, what are the least I can build on things that I see that I have cultivated somehow. I can't always trace how it's occurred, but I can see that there's been some changes that have moved in the right direction. So I say, okay, these are good ways I can use as examples. And also again, that measure of sattva, that confidence that comes from understanding, yeah, this works. This relinquishment, this letting go, developing goodness, these work. So then that's very helpful to us. We want to kind of, in a way, build our toolbox of how to work with the many difficulties we face or we identify in our lives. And one of the things that's hard with this is it's not only just breaking habits or bad habits or those unwholesome pathways that we have identified, but it can be sometimes a sense that like kind of getting a tool that somebody hands to you and you're like, well, I don't really know how to use this. And they say, well, you'll figure it out, so you don't have any instruction. And so that kind of feeling is like, well, I don't even know how this turns on or really what to do with it. So there might be a pulling back, a sense, oh no, I'm not ready for this. I don't really, I don't think I can do this. And so we put the tool down, rather than seeing like, okay, this takes a little bit of courage to actually start exploring something. So maybe if I look for a switch or see how, is it battery operated? Is there a plug I'm not seeing? Is there, what is it? How does this actually work? Something that goes back and forth, or is it cutting? And so you start to explore, and it feels clumsy sometimes, especially when we've sort of dulled our tools because we've let these habits proliferate a bit. So we're just not used to it. And so there can be a sense, oh, I'd rather not. Just let it go. This is too much work. It's easier just to get what I want, to do what I want. And so it's very useful to have that sense of going forth into the unknown with what we're doing. But it's also important to generate a sense of how it is that we're doing that, because we can do that in ways that aren't very skillful for ourselves. I was thinking of there's sort of a lot of motivational speakers around, and a couple of the monks were joking about one in particular who, I don't know his name, but he the way he motivates himself is to really, seems to be to yell at himself and swear at himself. And I personally don't think that'd work for me too well. So we have to figure out, that voice, that's that sort of coach, that the voice of wisdom, as Ajahn Jeff talks about, like our committee members, those who we want to kind of bring up in our own mind about what are the helpful voices that we know in our own minds that can be of assistance to ourselves. And so that takes skill to kind of learn that, because some of the ways that we are sort of multiple personalities, so to speak. Some of them have quieter voices. They don't get to be heard very often. And this can often be that voice of wisdom where you might recognize that in yourself, that sort of stifled voice, the one that you may not want to listen to, because sometimes the stifled voice, the one that you try to suppress, is the one that's saying, well, maybe you should let go of this. Or maybe this might not be too helpful for you. And I say, no, I don't want to listen to that one. But the more that we give strength to that voice, the more that we give strength to that helpful personality trait, that sense of the voice of wisdom within us, then we, by listening to it, paying attention to it, we strengthen it. And once we start to listen to it, then we gain a habit of listening more and more. And it becomes the right thing to do. And this is how truly wisdom can arise for us, where we know, oh yeah, I've been in this situation before, and it didn't work out. And why would I really want to do that to myself again? Or conversely, we say the opposite. Oh yeah, I've been in this situation and this was the right thing to do in this way. And actually that was really good. That felt helpful for me, so I'm going to try that again. But we can't discern that without knowing it. And the way that we know that is through this practice that at least I think all of you know very well. As Lumpur Sumedho talks about, we cultivate awareness of our own experience. We see that as our refuge rather than the refuge of our babbling on mind. And that is often our refuge. It's where we tend to go to. And so the development and cultivation that we are engaging in is really pulling back from that. All the thoughts, the opinions, the beliefs, the sense of gaining our own sensual experiences that are pleasant for us, or whatever it might be, we start to learn to let go of that and to develop more of a place of refuge for us, a sense of that understanding of our own minds that will guide us away from all of those unwholesome streams, those unwholesome rivulets that kind of make their way down the hill and then gather into a river. So I would encourage this kind of examination of your own experience, your own history, and of course, memories are fallible. We can't rely on them in a way that to know that they're pure, that things actually happen, or we haven't in a certain way entangled them with our own sense of what we thought happened or what occurred. When you speak to people about your memories, for those who have been around you, they often say, no, it happened kind of more like that. I say, oh, that's right. So even more so when we're just engaging in that with ourselves, we do need to give a little bit of weight to the fact that we may not quite remember things as they are, but it is a very helpful very helpful examination for our lives to think about our past, think about our trajectories, the causes and conditions of our lives, where we're headed, what are the ways that we particularly get into trouble. And if we can identify them, then how is it that we keep following them? And how can we better let go and move in much more wholesome directions? I was telling Craig this morning how he was talking about these kind of changes, and I said, oh, I remember that I used to record myself sometimes when I was really angry, and I could kind of get into quite a strong rant in my mind. And so I would record myself, I would actually voice these things. And then every now and again, sometime later, whether it's many months or even a year or two, I'd listen, and wow, it was such an experience to hear myself caught in an experience that strong, where I really believed the angry mind, I believed my sense of justice and righteousness. And I haven't experienced that so much, really, in a long time. It's much more that it comes in just a very shorter time. But I don't. It's actually hard to see, like, well, how did that change? Because I can't really take credit for anything in terms of doing something about that. I'm not sure if in the end it just became sort of it just died out to a certain extent. But I also talked to Craig about the hidden danger of not seeing that there's also just the conditions that can occur that can hide something like that. And so I was just saying, like, well, it's interesting to think about having been a junior monk, and in those early years, there's a lot of need to let go. It can be very painful because so many things are needing to drop away, and it seems like, I remember just seeming like, wow, I don't think I'm going to make it, because there was a sense that I had to be able to deal with not getting my own way all the time. And it was extremely frustrating. And so frustrating that, I couldn't see clearly, that there was just this righteousness in my own belief in how I should have engaged in a particular way, or what I should have gotten my way, or done it the way I wanted to. And really, these are gifts, these kind of ways in the monastic life where others point out to us, hey, nope, you don't get to do that. That's not going to work out for you how you want it. And it's hard because what the message that's being given appeared when I was very junior as like some sort of like a control thing, like I was being controlled. But when I think back about it now, every single time, or mostly every single time, because I would say it wasn't always that the person was so clear when they delivered something, but most of the time it was delivered out of kindness. It was, when I was encouraged to train in a particular way, it was done so in terms of, hey, this would be better for you. I think this would be better for you. I see this as a problem, and I'm encouraging you in this direction. But what I was talking about in terms of the danger is that, well, as we spend years in the robes, or I can say as I spend years in the robes, I've seen that it gets to be less and less that we have that sort of person or people who are kind of instructing us in the same way. And so those desires are not always seen. So like, for example, recently one of the monks actually gave me some feedback, and I suspected this was going to be said to me, but I didn't know when or how. And it was hard to hear because I said, oh yeah, that's a defilement. That's a defilement I have, and this monk has seen that. And it was exactly what I was describing. Just, I wanted to get my own way, I wanted to have my particular desire met, and I was enacting that over and over, and this monk eventually said, hey, this is what you're doing, this is the outcome of what you're doing. And so again, I can't take any credit for it, but it didn't affect me the same way. Where I was like, before I think it'd be like a knife or something, oh, I'm so wrong, I'm such a bad monk. Whereas it was more like, oh no, this is the truth, this is correct. And I do need to do something about this. And it wasn't a big deal, but it was more, it wasn't anything really heinous or even a problem with our rules or anything like that. It was just, I could see that there was some sort of demanding or desiring behavior that I was having that was impacting another person. And that I needed to kind of look at that. And so it was met with appreciation. At first it was, this natural voice of kind of, oh, is that true? And yeah, it is. It's definitely true. So that then there was this sense of appreciation, and I'm so happy I can say that I don't think that I intentionally, really brought that up in my mind as something that I've tried to cultivate so much, but it's there, it's present. That I can now witness my own fear around feedback or, being encouraged by other monks without having to act on it or get into some sort of righteous rant within my own mind about how wrong that other monk is. And one of the things that I keep trying to say is that this can be masked through something like seniority, where, you just, as I mentioned, you don't get that feedback so much. So it also means that I need to look for that. I need to look for ways where I can encourage that in other monks, and I'm not discouraging that. So also as a recollection of trying to look at this development, it's also seeing like our own conditions in our life and where we are in our position. And like there can be a position of coming from privilege, for example, and then not seeing that. Ajahn Cunda and I were speaking about this the other day, saying that if you've been a monk for 15 or 20 years, you might not see that or it might not feel any different exactly, but others might perceive that very differently. And if you're not aware of that, you might not see that there's kind of a whole other world playing out that's not there if you don't recognize it. It's there, but you can't see it. And so just acknowledging that, for example, if I say something to somebody and I'm not very careful with how I say it, it can be very painful for that person, because they don't see me the same way as I perceive myself. So this is just a sense of really trying to be aware of our own development, aware of how we can kind of examine like where it is we've come from and what it is we're doing, but try to come from a sort of a realistic sense and guide ourselves in the best way we know, using our own sense of what's wholesome and unwholesome, and what can really aid ourselves along in this sense of development of the Dhamma. So I offer those for some words of reflection.